かかってきな。
Retro throwbacks rarely go for the mid-90s mix of 2D sprites and low-res 3D models, but along comes Octopath Traveler, a game that manages to both faithfully recreate the aesthetic and add to it in subtle yet meaningful ways. It's a great look, one that draws you into the world and delights you with small artistic touches that bring something magical to otherwise simple and familiar environments.
There is no choice.
Taking pleasure in the dreamy diorama-esque look of Octopath will satisfy you for a while, as will the immediately likable combat system, which implements a few small innovations to revitalize the otherwise traditional turn-based battle mechanics. What may ultimately trip you up, however, is the narrative. A collection of 8 short stories, each divided up into 4 chapters of increasingly higher difficulty. After picking a protagonist at the start of the game, you gather allies by traveling to their icons on a map. This approach is viable in theory, but Octopath woefully struggles to weave interesting tales despite the wide range of personalities behind them.
Anyhow, here we are.
Coupled with wildly varying English voice acting, it's all too easy to want to reach for the skip button when a story sequence slowly winds up. When engaging with story sequences, everyone but the relevant character is relegated to being backseat companions, hidden away from view entirely. The only time your team acts as such outside of battle is during rare opportunities that you get a banter notification, which allows for a brief discussion between a couple of characters, depending on who you've got in your party.
So,
these can be entertaining from time to time, but they are too infrequent and inconsequential to truly matter. It is disappointing to report that Octopath's stories are more or less a wash, but that doesn't mean the world is any less intriguing on its own. On the contrary, it's constantly refreshing to see how much care has gone into fleshing out run-of-the-mill NPCs, many of whom have peculiar backgrounds that outshine some of the more mundane major characters. Octopath's towns are brimming with excuses to look twice at the unsung heroes and villains that call your rest stops home. NPCs feature other smart interactive touches as well that call upon your character's individual strengths. Just like you'd inquire into backstories, you can steal belongings, or talk strangers into selling what you can't steal. You can allure them into following your crew and helping out in battle, or pick a fight with them in the middle of town. Just a few of your options.
始めよう。どう動く？私の出番だな。いい戦いだった。
Without a broad objective steering your party across the world map, you're instead guided by icons that tell you where to pick up the next chapter for a specific character and what level your party should be to survive. The initial stops circle a sizable body of water in the middle of the map, with each round of chapters shifting ever slightly outwards towards the edge. The precision of events and markers is measured in such a way to provide natural progress through each character's personal adventure. Keep up with the logical order, and you may never have to grind for experience if you avoid fast traveling to previously visited locations. In order to activate a chapter, you need the relevant character in your party. But even if you neglect to cycle party members regularly enough to keep them on even footing by the time they're called upon, you can still carry a grossly underleveled character into battle without too much concern. It's one of the many reasons why Octopath's battle system feels so fresh. It's about what you hit the enemy with, rather than how hard the hit lands. Every enemy in Octopath is vulnerable to at least one particular element or weapon type, and most are vulnerable to 3 or more. When you successfully strike with a relevant spell or weapon, an icon appears so that you've got a clear record of what to do down the road. With these tactics in mind, your goal is to break an enemy's defenses by hitting them enough times with effective attacks to whittle away their shield. Once broken, an enemy will lose their next turn and remain in a highly vulnerable state where attacks hurt them a little bit more than usual. The other important piece of combat is the battle point system. Battle points act as extra swings of a weapon in a turn, or as a means to power up magical attacks. Every character gets 1 BP added to their slate per turn so long as they don't spend any, which will delay the accrual process by an additional turn. In most cases, saving up BP is a beneficial way to wear down an enemy's shield in 1 turn with a single character. But once an enemy is broken, BP is best used to fortify single attacks during that window of opportunity. The concept of breaking enemies is paramount during boss battles. Long affairs that test your ability to remain focused on your resources, character's turn order, and preparing for surprise attacks. Common enemies will pose formidable challenges as well, but those fights go a lot quicker, and you're afforded more opportunities to flex your various skills for the fun of it, rather than to satisfy the punishing demands of excruciating bosses. Your battle party is only as good as you make them, which means not only earning enough experience points to level them up and learn new skills, but coordinating individual skill sets to diversify your options as a team, while also doubling down on your most effective attacks. Each of the 8 characters starts with a distinct job, and as you explore, you uncover shrines that let you assign a secondary job as well. Each secondary job, though, is limited to 1 character at a time. You will no doubt come to prefer certain jobs over others, but some of the most valuable skills are tied to characters rather than their particular assignments. Hannet, the Hunter, for example, has the unique ability to capture enemies that can be summoned during future battles a limited number of times, whereas Alphen, the Apothecary, can make medicine mid-battle by synthesizing salves with expendable ingredients. Between these unique character traits and a variety of jobs on hand, your party will transform on a regular basis to keep up with the demands of bosses, and particularly finicky enemy types. This constant search for new strategies leads to a wonderful variety of experiences and accomplishments by the time you reach Octopath's end.
Let my arrow fly and true.
Despite the lackluster stories that pull you through the world, Octopath thrives on its character progression and the temptations of high-level challenges and rewards. The promise of new jobs, exciting boss fights, and powerful gear will inspire you to poke around every corner, and there are no shortage of discoveries to strive for. And all the while, you're treated to one of the most interesting and effective reimaginings of a retro aesthetic around. Octopath will likely be a divisive game due to its fractured storytelling, but it's one worth playing despite its troubled tales. Its high points are simply too good to ignore.